welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined, as usual, by Josh Sullivan.
Yellow.
Welcome to you, Josh.
Thank you.
And Matt Van Milligan.
Hi.
Welcome to you, Matt.
Thank you.
Habemus Papam.
We have a Pope.
Yeah. And what a beautiful week it's been. Hey, I know we've been just talking before we went on the air here about like our experiences of where were we when it happened and how exciting it is. Pope Leo XIV is our new Holy Father. But before we get into all that, like what just a beautiful moment in the life of the church. A couple of things that struck me right off the bat is like all the eyes of the world are on the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And for once, like positive news
It's
about
not
the Catholic
negative.
Church on every channel, you know.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself too, think of all the different media people have, People pay for Netflix and Crave and YouTube subscriptions and all this stuff that's on every channel. And for like a day, people were just staring at a chimney. Yeah, like that was the
and a couple of seagulls.
And a couple of seagulls.
Yeah.
That was the most exciting thing on television was this chimney, right?
Yeah.
And the Catholics and non-Catholics alike are like, do we have lots of people have told me they were at work. They were different places, and they had in the corner of their laptop the chimney watch there. You know, I know schools when the white smoke came, went to the gym or turned on the TV or watched it together. Like it's just like a beautiful moment in history happening right before our eyes.
Yeah, we're making history, quite literally. It was actually, we're making history a different way in my house because my wife was at work and my kids were all gone. I had the house to myself. So that was a whole other, So I was sitting there with my work. I had my laptop out and everything else. I had my couple screens up and then I had the TV, my big screen TV on. I was like, wow, this is the first time I think I can control the TV, sitting in my kitchen, eating the food I want. This is amazing. This is a great day. I got to be honest. It was a great day, even if I didn't have the chimney to watch. But before that, the seagulls, I got to just comment. Did you notice how there's one seagull for sure? He was the hero. But then all of a sudden, like the next day, there was like baby seagull. Yeah. Like there was two seagulls with a baby. Yeah. And it was walking around. I thought, wow, this is crazy. It's a whole family event.
Yeah, it's a family. The whole family's involved, right? Yeah. And I really just appreciated everything about it. And that is to say we're going to get into speaking about our Holy Father. But I just appreciated everything about it. Even like the imagery, like the Vatican media does a superb job of capturing the moment, right? Like the images of the cardinals processing into the Sistine Chapel, the oaths that they take, and that dramatic moment when
closing the door,
they close the doors of the conclave. Like everything was just cinema on you're watching it. It's just so beautiful.
Experience.
The crowds were electric in the square. I was watching EWTN for their coverage. Their coverage was fantastic. Their commentators were amazing. Like everything about the whole time was just so beautiful.
If you're going to watch anything Catholic, I'm going to recommend, if you were watching CNN or CBC or CTV or something else, I'm going to recommend, if you're going to watch something Catholic and you are a Catholic, go to a Catholic channel. Like EWTN was amazing, like you said. Yeah. They had Bishop Barron on. They had a bunch of different commentaries, and their commentators were great at making it interesting conversation. I learned a lot just watching them. But even the Vatican News had their own live stream and stuff that was great. Not as much commentary we were talking about before, so depending on, because EWTN only had very specific times that they were doing their live correspondence, and Vatican News just had it on all the time. And so you kind of flipping back and forth between them. But there was a lot, I learned a lot, not only that, even just about as they were announcing as a cardinal is coming up to do a reading at the Mass or something. And it was ladies that did the reading at the Mass, but or the next day. But as they were focusing on one cardinal or other, you're learning these little tidbits of information that you might not have known about them. And I loved even just as they were announcing, they're putting up pictures up of where they were from or where they're talking about all that. It was great to understand, okay, that's cool. It was great.
We talked about it a little bit when we talked about the conclave, and it's, the Vatican and the College of Cardinals are not the group of people that you would expect to be very technologically advanced or up on the curve. But with the conclave, employing some pretty advanced technology for signal blocking and media blackout on that. But the production value of the announcement of drone shots using drones. It was just just really, really impressive with the technological capability of this kind of ancient event. Yeah.
So the white smoke billowed on a Thursday, May 9th. I was surprised that the white smoke came that early. Like I like someone shouted white smoke. I was in the middle of the March for Life, and someone shouted white smoke. I was so shocked. Like turn on our cell phones and things to capture. So we know that it was only after the fourth vote that took place in the conclave. So an early vote, and that moment where you're like, okay, we have a pope. Then there's about an hour before you find out who it is, right? Yeah. And like I felt like the white smoke was just like gushing out of that chimney. Like they really put that smoke. I guess there was more ballots.
Like 5 minutes. They know. Well, now we know that they also use smoke bombs, and so they have. I think it was one of the cardinals was talking about it, and I can't remember. Maybe Cardinal Dolan or something was talking about how they have a box of all these other looks like little grenades or bombs or something, like they're smoke bombs. And so of all this black stuff that they burn inside with the ballots. And then they only have one for the white smoke. And so they have all these, because once they're done, but they're prepared for days of this kind of stuff. But one of the cool things I never realized until we just experienced, and I've experienced a couple of these, but this was the first time I think I was old enough or paid enough attention to it, that they don't burn the ballots every vote, which is something that I kind of just understood to be true, but they don't. They vote. If it's a no, they take another immediate ballot right after that, and then they burn the two together.
Yeah, that depends. Like there's 2 votes in the morning and 2 votes in the afternoon. So if the first vote in the morning is a no consensus, they immediately begin the second vote.
Yes.
And then they burn the ballot
all
together.
Of the ballots.
But for example, the night before, when they only had the one vote, it was a no vote. They burn it right away after that one vote, right? And so, and just like the energy in the square when there was white smoke, and of course everyone's wondering who it is. So the senior cardinal deacon comes out onto the balcony, the loggia of the St. Peter's Square, and announces Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, right? And I'll admit, I was like, who? Like, I was wondering who it was, asking people around me, because we were watching on my phone, the feed. So I was like, look it up, and shocked that it was an American born Pope, right?
Yeah.
What were your reactions?
Well, the same, but I had only heard the name as a long shot, as somebody like a lot of the commentary was saying that like the likelihood of an American Pope was in the single digit percentages. So just to hear that name, I was like, oh wow, that's a big shock, or that's
it's almost like taboo. It was almost like tabooed that an American would be the successor of St. Peter, right? You look at the long succession from St. Peter, the first pope, to the 267th, and you wouldn't think that there'd be an American on there. But also look at the physical limitations before like the most recent years. For an American to be pope, you have to travel across the Atlantic in boats, and who knows if you're going to get there in time and all this stuff. Now with travel, Cardinals are there pretty fast. This American born in Chicago, and what do you think? Taking the name Pope Leo XIV.
I think that was very symbolic, and I think there's some things here that, because one of the big reasons why we didn't think that there could be an American Pope was because America has been in the past, and still kind of is one of the superpowers of the world, right? And so one of the reasons I heard one of the cardinals give off why it wouldn't be American Pope would be because you would never tie the Catholic Church to another American with, like, you'd have a superpower in the religion and the superpower in the military force or whatever else, and that might be a little bit of conflict, or there might be problems there and everything else. Now, that's not to say that America still isn't a superpower, but I think that was one of his things, is coming out and not speaking English, speaking first. He spoke first in Italian, right? Because he's now the Bishop of Rome. So there's a symbolism there of speaking now, I am the shepherd of these people. These are my people, the Italian people of Rome. And then going to Spanish and speaking one of the, probably, I think the Spanish is the language most used by Catholics around the world. And so I can't remember percentages, but then the idea there being like he's speaking to his people, the Bishop of Rome, and then to the vast majority of Catholics, as well as his people in Peru, and kind of going there. Not once did he speak English in that whole first address that he was speaking. And then choosing the name Pope Leo, someone pointed out to us that choosing the name Pope Leo the 13th was Pope Leo the Great, I believe, right? Is that he's one of the ones that we, Pope Leo the 10th maybe. Anyways, Pope Leo the 13th was one of the ones that talked about a lot about industry and but specifically about Americanism and that you can't put what he called Americanism, and that you can't put your country over God. You can't put your dedication to this over you being a Catholic in your soul. And so he wrote a whole encyclical on this. And the idea that if the Pope's picking this name to as a mentor, as a guide or a spiritual. There's significance there to that name of Pope Leo the 14th, and that not that he is the Pope first, and I think that's what he showed when he was up there and saying that.
Yeah. Matt, reactions to the name?
So initially, because when he gave his initial address, he had kind of three emphases. He talked at missionary, like being like a missionary church. It was very Marian, which was great, and that it was Augustinian as well. So like he had those three kind of aspects, but that he gave the name Leo. And we were kind of patting ourselves on the back before the episode, just to say in our previous episode when we were talking about what does this new pope what is he facing entering the church? What are some of the things he's going to have to grapple with? And we talked about kind of the turning point of history that we seem to be at. That there's a lot of discussion about the role that AI is going to play in changing the landscape of work, of automation, of all these things. Leo the 13th, a lot of his encyclicals, a lot of his work was in the context of industrialization, and just like the dignity of work, the dignity of, that's really fitting for a lot of the things that Leo the 14th is going. We can only anticipate. Presumably going to have to engage with. It's also kind of a political crossroads for the church as well. So there's a lot of, and again, a lot of the commentary is kind of force fit or shoehorned into kind of a political landscape, but people are concerned about, the influence of something like socialism on the church or things like that. It's like Leo the 13th. That's something that he addressed specifically. He confronted Marxism. He, in a lot of his writing, distinguished between, the Catholic faith and kind of the earlier forms of socialism. So, again, for Leo the 14th to be at this crossroads or to be having to engage with these same issues or kind of the modern version of these same issues, I think it's really fitting and really hopeful for kind of what his pontificate might reveal.
And Leo the 13th also, some of my favorite things about Leo the 13th were that he named Thomas Aquinas a doctor of the church. And a lot of his sort of writings were surrounding sort of the Aquinas thinking, right? And then he also, brought to the forefront that there's an influence of evil working in this world around us that I think people tend to ignore. People just tend to ignore that evil kind of lurks around us. Wrote this prayer of Saint Michael the Archangel, Leo the 13th, mandated that the St. Michael prayer is to be prayed at the end of every Mass, just some beautiful things. If these things are pointing towards something that Leo the 14th, that's why he's kind of picked the name to honor his predecessor with the name. Beautiful things, I think, are in store. I love the choice of Leo the 14th.
Can I just say that's funny that we were talking about AI and stuff too, but it's something that is prevalent, and even to the point of as we were watching the smoke, I was using AI to do stuff, to post to our group chat and family chats and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I said was we were all sitting around, the white smoke came out, and then how long does it take for the Pope to get there? So I asked ChatGPT, make me a table of how long from the time the white smoke appeared to the time the Pope came out for Habemus Papam. And it did. It gave me the year that they were elected, white smoke times. So 618 here you can see for Pope John Paul II, 618, and then he came out on 645, so it's 27 minutes, 53 minutes for Pope Benedict, 66 minutes for Pope Francis. So he had an idea, just to kind of say how our world is changing. I just said, hey, give me a time and give me a table so I can see. And you can see it's all different times, 27 minutes to 66 minutes per se, even the first, when was the time that the doors were shut to the time that the first black smoke came on the first day, right? And it was about an hour roughly after that time that the door shut to maybe an hour and a half. And then, but for this one, it was 2.5 hours almost altogether.
it?
Like it was a long one. But comparing to other years and stuff, you can use AI to do all this stuff. That was amazing to help interact and make the experience even more. You knew a lot more going into this. I didn't need the news commentary for some of it. You know what I mean? I could look up that stuff on my own.
So his first words on the balcony, he's mentioned, the peace that the resurrected Jesus brings. He talks about that, like quotes Saint Augustine, like with you I am a Christian, right? For you I am a bishop, right? Just such I was like gushing, like hearing these things, and he was speaking in Italian, so I'm translating for everyone around us that were listening, crowded around, and I'm just like, he's quoting Saint Augustine, and it was just like really exciting. But these things I think are indicative of where we're going. And then the whole square, I forget the reports, 100,000 people were in the square or whatever.
It was packed,
It leads them in the Hail Mary. Let's all pray this together. Like just like a beautiful thing.
I'm really looking forward to the Augustine aspect
spirituality.
Of things. Yeah, the spirituality.
And I must be honest, I don't know much about the Augustine spirituality either, so I'm looking forward to that sort of flavor.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
One of the things that must have caught the attention of people when he came out on the balcony was that he did come out wearing the traditional mozzetta, and that is the sort of red covering that was over his white cassock, right? Popes traditionally wear the mozzetta when they come out onto the balcony, when they're elected. Pope Francis had chosen not to wear it, right? So he came out
just in the white.
simple white cassock, right? So right off the bat, just visually, that's probably one of the first things that people noticed, that he went back to that tradition.
We don't know. Like there's a lot of reports, right? And so it's really hard in this day and age to figure out what's truth and what's just gossip. But one of the things that is kind of being gossiped around, that he has a very traditional sense to the ritual of the Mass, or his way of performing ritualistic things with adoration and whatever else. And but he's showing that flavor to him in coming out in the full. Like he didn't go the way of Pope Francis, which I think could have started a whole new transition if he did. Like if he did that, then it's all the popes are going to do this from now on in. He's not living in the hotel. He's going back to the palace, right? And so he's going to be living back there. That was just announced today, was it, or yesterday? So, but
today,
yeah. So that's another big deal. Like he's going. Pope Francis is an outlier now on some of the traditional things that Pope Francis kind of came away from, but that's not a bad thing or a good thing. I think it's distancing himself, because people have already been talking about Pope Francis 2.0, but there's the difference here is automatically.
Yeah, and I think that people have to, people will say, okay, well, that was Pope Francis' prerogative to not wear the mozzetta, to live in the Casa Santa Marta, right? Well, we have to give the same respect to this Pope, whose prerogative is to wear it and to move back into that. One of the things that I was thinking about is like one of the classic sort of visual scenes from the Vatican is the window of the Pope's apartment, like the in the Pope's palace, right? Yeah. And I remember this when John Paul II was dying. If you remember back in 2005,
the camera was just on.
The camera was just on this window, and the light was on. And they'd go to bed, and the light would go off. And when we knew he was sick and in his final days, people would be under, like in the square, watching that window, praying. And even like sometimes at night during the papacy of Pope Benedict, you'd see the light on, and different reports were happening. We didn't see those images for the last 12 years because the Pope wasn't living in the palace, right? And so we're going to probably return to some of these sort of traditional images that we're used to seeing when looking at St. Peter's Square.
I'm really hoping he wears the big crown. I'm really hoping he gets the big old beehive. You know what I mean? Like that would be kind of cool. And but I think, but again, because there's a lot of awesome tradition and ritual that kind of come along with some of the stuff that we're experiencing. That I think a lot of the church nowadays is looking for again. You know what I mean?
Well, and if I may add, we have to remember here, I really appreciated the humility of Pope Francis. I did.
I agreed.
But we have to remember also that the Pope is the vicar of Christ. He is the representative of Jesus Christ, our Lord, here on earth. He's the vicar. He's the successor of St. Peter. So with this role, yes, he's human. Yes, he's, chosen to do this part. But there's a certain respect that comes with this position, right?
Yeah.
So if that means wearing traditional garbs and what did you call it? The
beehive
crown, those are things that are steeped, rich in history. Yeah. I don't think I'm not a big fan of just throwing away those things because times have changed, quote unquote.
Yeah, no.
I think there's a certain level of respect, dignity, and why not flair that goes with the Vicar of Christ. It would be like saying the King of England, or the Queen of England when she was alive. She cannot. It's 2023 or whatever, 2024. No need to wear a crown anymore. Yeah. No need to do this anymore. It's part of it is steeped in tradition. It's to honor the role they're in. And part of it is pageantry that I don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that was one of the things, like when we took the teenagers, when Pope Francis came to Quebec, we took the teenagers down to see him, and we all stood there and we stood waiting for hours for Pope Francis to come by. We were right up front as he came by, and we were able to wave and everything else. And then I remember thinking to myself, oh, well, this was fun. I don't know if I'd want to do it again, but this was like a fun experience. But then we did do it again when we went to the cathedral, St. Anne's, and when we stood all in the front and we waited for the Pope to come by, and we got some awesome pictures. With some awesome pictures of our teens standing in front of the Pope while the Pope stops and waves and stuff, and right in front of the church. But there is that, it's that sense of there's a what is it? Feels like you're at a baseball game or something, but it's for our faith. You know what I mean? Like there's an excitement.
And I think there's something to be said about being in the presence of the Vicar of Christ as well.
Yeah.
Like being in his presence, I think is really special. We have the benefit here of a few days since his election. We're filming this episode today, so we know that he's kind of snuck out or taken. I shouldn't say snuck out, but he's made some surprise visits. He's gone to Saint Maria Maggiore, where Pope Francis is buried. He's gone to the Augustinian Church in Rome to visit, and everywhere he goes, there's fanfare. There's something about being in the presence of the Vicar of Christ, right? And I think that is really special. What I'm thinking about all the time, in 2022, I had the opportunity to meet Pope Francis, and when he kind of came down this long stretched hallway towards me, he was in a wheelchair at the time, and stopped and said hello to every single one of us that were there in this hallway. In fact, he had asked us, because we were involved in serving at his mass, as the MCs. So he had asked for those serving at the mass to be in this hall to meet him. And I just remember leaning over, he was in a wheelchair, and speaking to the Holy Father with respect in Italian.
Yeah.
And I remember just being so nervous and, and just here it was, a beautiful moment. And then I thought to myself yesterday as I was driving, I was like, the next time I meet the Holy Father, we're going to be talking like me and you are right now. Because he speaks perfect English. His native language is English. It's the first time. It's the first time that we've had a native English speaker as our Holy Father. How cool is that? Even like when he spoke English at his first sort of at the first mass he celebrated as the Pope, with all the cardinals, he gave this impromptu sort of address in English. Had like chills listening. It was like, here's our Holy Father speaking in plain English.
Yeah, something I can relate to and understand. And
And an aspect we haven't really talked about yet is that like his capability with language that he's shown so far in the first few days. That's giving his initial address, like speaking Spanish, speaking Italian, speaking like Latin. His Latin is very good. Like his ability to speak English. For me, it's a throwback to Pope Benedict and like his capability with language. And then again, looking more into his background, he's just like he has his doctorate in canon law. He's a mathematician. So just like that, he has this kind of academic background that again in Pope Benedict really drew me to the church. That's like the again, just really looking forward to what he's going to do, how he's going to write, how he's going to. Also, another aspect we didn't talk about is that like the missionary aspect of the church, but also kind of the how the church is positioned in a lot of the kind of global conflicts and things that are going, like his capability with a number of and his ability to identify with a number of different cultures, global is a really, really big part of the role of the Pope. So again, just really looking forward to how he's going to navigate that, and just really impressed with his capability so far.
I just thought of it. He has 3 passports now, because he had 2. He had right, because he was Peruvian and American. He had the 2 passports, but now he's going to have the Vatican, like the Roman, because he's a citizen there. Yeah. And so I never thought about not just the how that would come about, like, you know, a bunch of men get together and then now vote them in, and now you just have to accept that this guy is got one of your passports. You know what I mean? Like, this is just, the options aren't you know. I think
that I think what we got to remember is like the initial excitement that we get when we have a new pope, and I think you can, you know, we're just kind of
it's
sort of sharing that excitement today on this episode. But you know, we got to watch too, because slowly but surely, with anything that the Catholic Church does, is going to be negative in the media, right?
Yeah.
And I think we just got to be careful that we are always giving our Holy Father the benefit of the doubt. You know, you look back on the papacy of Pope Francis, there were a lot of things that he said that people had issue with and whatever. And we always tried to maintain the benefit of the doubt for him, right?
Give him the charitable interpretation.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that you're right, Matt, with his background in canon law, with his background, with his academic, like just smart guy, lots of capabilities there. I think one of the gifts that we're going to see in Pope Leo is his ability to eloquently share truths about our faith, because he navigates well through all these languages. You know, Pope Francis, God bless him, and popes before him, you know, spoke Spanish, spoke Italian. Other languages were struggles. I mean, how many languages do we speak, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just, this guy has a gift. He can visit English-speaking countries and speak eloquently and comfortably about issues that are facing that part of the world, right? He can move off to speaking Italian, Spanish, French, whatever. And I think that's going to be a really big role that he's going to play, major player in bringing countries together.
Now that you say that, it just kind of comes to mind. The Spanish speaking, because we talked about he spoke in Spanish, but our Spanish speaking countries are a lot of times, well, culturally Catholic, but there is a lot of Catholicism in those countries, right? Whether it be Mexico, whether it be wherever, Spain, like all over the place. But one of the places where we see a decline in Catholicism a lot of times is in those English-speaking countries. And those are, you know what I mean? And so it would be very interesting to see that his speaking in English, how that can be. Because you're right, as I listen to JP2, and as I listen to Pope Benedict, and as I listen to Pope Francis speak in English, a lot of times it was not off the cuff. It was written down. It was very precise, and almost sometimes seeming, as you would imagine, someone who doesn't speak the language naturally, almost like phonetically spoken out sometimes, you know what I mean? And so depending on who was speaking. And so you didn't have that same connection. But I can imagine the teenagers growing up where they can perfectly understand the Pope, or, you know, that's a tie that they have. Or even the fallen away Catholics, as are, like, I'm just using Canada as an example. We have a lot of cultural Catholics that have fallen away from the church, but they're all English-speaking Catholics that have fallen away. Well, now they're hearing the Pope actually speak in their own language and not some translation of a translation. You know what I mean? Like something that they're actually speaking.
And that's going to be something that I think we're going to benefit from too. Yeah. Is Pope Francis was sort of the victim sometimes of bad translation, right? And so headlines that were translated poorly already spread before the truth came out. Whereas, you know, this Holy Father, he'll be able to speak plainly. One thing I think that you're going to see change probably from the style of Pope Francis to the style of Pope Leo Well, I don't think that there's going to be as many off the cuff interviews or I think that that was Pope Francis was comfortable speaking to media off the cuff
as a pastor,
But I think just with the background that Pope Leo XIV has, I think probably wants to be prepared and eloquent. I mean, I heard him this week speak off the cuff. He speaks very prayerfully and very eloquently, but I don't know if he's going to be as comfortable giving sort of off the cuff interviews.
I was one of the concerns that first came forward was when you see the Pope come out to give his first words, and then he's reading off a piece of paper some of his words, and the conspiracy theorist in me, I'm going to suggest, was like, did he plan on winning? Did he where did he plan those in? And I was talking to my brother about it, and I was like I don't know how I feel about that. And then we were discussing, we came to the conclusion, well, if it started to look like the vote was going your way, because we don't exactly know how the votes were going, but obviously it wasn't, he wasn't winning until that time, right? But if it started to look like he might actually do it, a smart man would have gone home in the afternoon, because there's 2 votes in the morning that he didn't win, but it could have been looking pretty close, to go home and have rest and everything else. If it was me, I probably would have went and just be like, okay, this might actually happen. I better figure out what to say. Yeah. You know what I mean? And type
but
up
he
some
did
stuff.
have time between coming out of the balcony and being elected.
You're right, but I don't know if they would have a printer there and a computer and all that stuff. But
I mean, he's the Pope. They probably snapped these things together for him, right? And I mean, and he didn't give like a 30-minute address.
No, I agree. That's what I mean. But I think what I meant by all this though was, I think that's how careful he's going to be with his words. Is that he wanted to. So he's thinking about it. He's planning ahead of time. He's not off the cuff necessarily. He's thinking about it. He's making sure that his first words. He knows that his first words are going to mean something, and so he's prayerfully discerning this. And he doesn't know that he's going to win, but he could suggest that this is a possibility. I'm going to write some words down, just like a couple sentences, and I, you know what, I'm going to do an Italian first, and then I'm going to go to Spanish, and you know what I mean. And those are like, I think he's the kind of guy that would have planned that stuff, not in a prideful way, just in a being prepared for the moment, because if this happens, I don't want to blunder it. I want to make sure that that I'm representing the office well. Does that make sense?
I mean, he spoke about pretty common things that you would speak, like he thanked Pope Francis, he thanked the people of Rome, thanked the people of Peru, mentioned his Augustinian roots, and then closed off with a Marian prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he had an outline of what
the peace be with you. These are the first words of the risen Christ. And I mean, maybe he stole his homily from Sunday. I don't know. But but some of those things kind of were, I thought, well thought out. I think that's a good thing for, it's a difference from Pope Francis that sometimes just spoke off the cuff. I would imagine.
And I think that's gonna be a benefit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think maybe the media took advantage of Pope Francis by putting him on the spot. And I'm already starting to see sort of the personality of Pope Leo come out. Like today, for example, he had this meeting with all the journalists. He thanked them for their coverage. He sort of he kind of showed his sense of humor a little bit, made a little joke with them in English. And as he toured around sort of to thank people, there were people who in the last 12 years would have been very comfortable with Pope Francis and his ways, who were sort of asking Pope Leo for selfies.
Yeah.
And he said, no. Not at this time sort of thing. And so you're starting to see, his own sort of
flavor coming out.
Forward,
yeah. I like
which is fine, and that's, remember, the Lord calls people to these to serve, and each one brings their own sort of flavor, their own charisms, their own gifts. And I think at the beginning, it's not even been a week yet since we've had Pope Leo XIV, but I'm hopeful and optimistic for this papacy. And, at 69 years old, barring any mishaps or things, probably going to be the Pope for a long time.
Well, yeah, 13 years, probably 14 years, potentially, right?
Pope Francis was 88 when he died, right? John Paul II was 85 when he died. Pope Benedict was 92 when he died.
But he retired before that.
Yeah, we could have Pope Leo XIV for a long time. Closing thoughts about, what do you think, in your opinion, is something that is important for the Pope to do very soon?
So again, in our previous episode, like what is the church? What church is the Pope inheriting? We talked a little bit about like he has ties to tradition, but he also has kind of a missionary heart. And we said like Pope Francis had a missionary heart, or 100%. Pope Francis had a missionary approach to the church, but he put a lot of cards on the table. That the incoming pope kind of has to synthesize and reconcile to kind of the history of the church. I think I'm hopeful, or just the indication that we have so far, is that Leo XIV is showing that kind of having traditional sensibilities and a missionary approach to the church are perfectly compatible, which I think will go a long way to address a lot of kind of the internal conflicts that the church is experiencing right now.
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I think that's what it is. You heard a lot of people talking about the Pope before, and it was about seems to be a divide, and it is a traditional versus evangelical heart. Maybe is the right way to put it. And there seems to be this divide, and almost like a progressive conservative type of idea, and the political polls and all that stuff. But I think he seems to be of both camps, and to be able to tie that together, which is going to be really awesome for that healing in the church to begin.
Yeah, I'd like to see unity see the faithful become stronger, working together. I think one of the unfortunate parts of Pope Francis' papacy was that I think the divide enlarged within the church. But I'm hoping to see some unity there. And already, you kind of see the cardinals in unity. They elected him after only 4 votes.
Yeah.
You see lots of smiles on the balcony when he came out. You see comments from cardinals since the election wishing him well. And I don't think they're just sort of pleasantries like, we wish him well. I think there's this, joy of having him as the new Holy Father. And also what Pope Leo spoke about in his first Mass, he's looking forward to working with the cardinals.
Yeah. Yes.
With the cardinals. And I think that is going to bring unity to the top. And hopefully you're going to see that trickle down. Some things, little things, if I may, I would like for him to set a date for the canonization of Blessed Carlo Acutis.
So we actually know.
Maybe at the Jubilee of Youth.
It'd be great.
With Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati.
We'll be there.
And a question that I have, being from Chicago, being from the United States, where will he visit first?
Yeah.
I don't think he'll visit the United States first. Pope Francis never went home to Argentina, but I think he will visit the States, just not first. So where will he visit first as his first papal trip? And a question about being in the States, will there be a beatification coming forward for Archbishop Fulton Sheen? That's
interesting.
my question about to see.
See, I think his missionary heart, he's going to be going somewhere missionary for the first trip. That's my prediction right there.
Yeah.
So, but Bishop Fulton Sheen, that's great. I
know. So time will tell. We're only a couple of days into the 267th papacy that belongs to Leo XIV. So let's keep our Holy Father in our prayers. And if you want to add to the conversation, you can by sending us an email at askus@thecatholicbuzz.com or commenting right on our social media channels. But that's all the time we have today. So for Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on The Catholic Buzz.